the customs duties. From 100%, it comes down to 10% and everything becomes cheaper. It's not going to be happening.
It's not
like
a free-for-all.
It's not going to be a free-for-all.
So which cars will get affected? I'm guessing it's cars like the Range Rovers,
The SVs. Yeah, I can't say anything.
I don't know. Jaguar, don't listen to Sirish and just make a sports car, please.
But nobody really wants a Chinese EV. Apparently, I think like a third of all Discovery customers, owners, have dogs, have pets.
That's a nice stat.
Welcome to the Evo India podcast. In this week's episode, we are talking about prices of imported cars, specifically prices of cars that are coming in from the UK. Now, there's been a lot of talk around the India-UK free trade agreement. Initial noises have been made. Some papers have also been signed. But does that mean your next car, if it's going to be an imported Range Rover, will that be 50% cheaper? That's what we're going to talk about in this podcast. I'm Sirish Chandran, editor, Evo India.
And I'm Aatish Mishra, assistant editor at Evo India.
And this whole podcast came about after we spent almost a week in the UK with JLR. So we're also going to be talking about JLR's plans, their growth. Aatish, do you know that in India, now JLR is the third highest selling luxury car manufacturer?
Yes, I know. And that's a big deal. They've actually overtaken Audi.
Yep.
And JLR was nowhere 3 years ago. You know, they were selling, 2,500 cars a year?
So I remember post-COVID, that first Indian Car of the Year award that we had, the Defender, that won the Premium Car Award. But you didn't see too many Defenders back then. And now it's 4 years since it won that Premium Car Award at the
And
I-30?
actually, it came out in 2019, if I'm not wrong.
Yep.
So it's an old car
been
now.
Around for a while. But that desirability with its design, you see one on the road and also everybody specs it and personalizes it. So they all look a little different, apart from obviously all the politicians with their white Defenders. But apart from that, all the black ones, the olive green ones with the side panniers or what are they called? Those boxes on the side, the ladders on the side. All of them look really cool. And that is fueling sales. So these guys were saying that in India, Defender sales have gone up by 80%. Now, ever since they reduced prices of the Range Rover and the Range Rover Sport after local assembly, that was a big thing the first time, local assembly of the Range Rover outside of the UK.
That was a very big deal.
Yeah, so their numbers went up 2.5 times.
That's insane. And the Range Rover is a big ticket car. It's not a cheap car.
Yeah, average selling price 2 crores?
That's insane.
Hugely profitable. Same with the Defender. Of course, Defenders are also sold with the 4-cylinder engine. I wouldn't recommend that. The 6-cylinder engines are much, much nicer, better suited to the character of the car. But the Defender is also selling.
Yep.
Now, the Defender prices haven't gone down. And let's get back to on topic. The FTA.
Yeah.
Is that going to make a difference to the prices of Range Rovers? Now, the JLR guys are also a little kind of pulling their hair because there's a lot of conversation on social media all over the place saying that prices are going to drop by 50%. So obviously, people who are in the market for a Range Rover right now, they will think twice.
They're holding back right now.
Yeah. They're not going to say, it doesn't matter if prices drop by 50% because resale values will go down and nobody wants to look like a fool, right?
Correct.
Nobody wants to spend more when tomorrow the next fellow is going to buy it at 50% less. But that is not going to happen so soon. Okay, let's talk about how this is going to function. Now, the initial sign-off has happened. After this goes into a discussion with the bureaucrats. There are apparently some 25 or 30 different categories and each category will have to be vetted, will have to be decided upon in terms of the tax structure.
And when you mean categories, you mean like auto is one category and then there are multiple other industries which will
I'm
be
not
affected.
sure if auto is under another category clubbed with something else. I'm assuming auto will be a category on its own, considering obviously the value of the category. So, but I'm not too sure. But I believe there are between 25 to 30 different categories. All has to be negotiated upon and come to a structure. Okay, that's one. Now, is that going to happen tomorrow? No chance. It's going to take anywhere from 12 to 15 to 18 to even more time.
Months, you're saying?
Months. Yeah. So, not years. You're looking at maybe 1.5 years for something like this to actually take shape. So, it's right now in the discussion phase. The second is that it's not going to be opened up completely. Like, no, after 1.5 years, everything, the prices, the customs duties, from 100%, it comes down to 10% and everything becomes cheaper. It's not going to be happening.
It's not
like
a free-for-all.
It's not going to be a free-for-all because there will be quotas.
Yes.
So
what do you mean by quotas?
So it will open up gradually. So say the first year it'll be for 1,000 cars. Now that 1,000 cars will have to be split between X number of manufacturers. Then it'll be 2,000 cars, then 5,000 cars, then open up completely. Because otherwise it shocks the whole system. If you look at it, JLR have invested in their factory in India, in Pune. They've invested in the localization of the Range Rover and the Range Rover Sport.
Yeah.
Now, suppose tomorrow it's opened up, then what happens to all that investment? And secondly, then why would anybody invest in India in terms of local manufacturing? Also think about it this way, that the India-UK FTA is just the first of the many FTAs that will happen. There will be an EU FTA, which will obviously benefit Mercedes and BMW and Porsche, right? There will be, and in fact, before all of this, there will be something with the US because Trump is putting hell of a lot of pressure. So something will happen over there. Though for auto, I don't see that really benefiting because obviously America, left and drive. And secondly, we don't buy pickups and we don't really buy the cars that are sold in America. So for us, of interest is the EU and the UK. Okay, you were asking?
I was saying, do the CKD Range Rovers actually get affected by this? Like, so now that Range Rover is invested in a local facility and they are assembling the big Range Rover here, does it mean the Range Rover actually won't benefit out of this FTA?
It will not, because see, when you import a car, you got a whole range of duties. Now, when you locally assemble, so SKDs are 20% duties and CKD is 10% duties. Now, eventually, when it does, the FTA does take effect, the duties come down to some 10% or so. So they are already getting that benefit. So for the buyer, if you're buying a locally assembled Range Rover or Range Rover Sport, you are already getting that benefit. So with the FTA, there's not going to be any difference.
So which cars will get affected? I'm guessing it's cars like the Range Rovers,
the SVs. The SV range, which actually that's something that JLR is actually pushing because obviously high margin, great in terms of visibility and unique cars. So the SV range, definitely, that will make a difference. So Rajanamba, who is the head of JLR in India, he said that the current products really is not going to make any difference. The benefit will be a year and a half from now when everything is in place. Then the next cars that they're going to be bringing, like the SV, we have the Range Rover Sport Edition 2. That is a CBU. Those prices will
drop.
And those will reduce.
And it's a fair bit right now. I think that car is 3 crore rupees.
It's 3 crore rupees,
and it's a Range Rover Sport. So it's smaller than the big Range Rover. Obviously, it's an SV, so it's got the big engine, it's got the fancy suspension, it's got all of that. But it's so much more than a full-size Range Rover, And if that comes down, it'll be great, You see more sporty
SUVs.
SUVs.
You're looking at the regular Range Rover. Look at the price of the Range Rover SV.
Yeah, no, that's another level.
The Ranthambore edition, 5.1 crore rupees. They had some 20 cars or so, or a dozen cars,
and also
all of them were sold out within a week. All of them were sold out.
What was the revenue from that one launch?
Yeah, so exactly. Now, they did contribute some money towards the Wildlife Foundation, towards the Ranthambore in terms of conservation. I don't know how much that was, but they did do some CSR also around it. But that single car sold out. And I think that's the most expensive Range Rover that has been sold.
No, and you know what? You have to give it to JLR. They do have Indian ownership and they're giving India the attention it deserves. 2 special editions in 2 years just for India. That's pretty cool.
The second edition, now there's no press release that has come out saying that things have sold out and all the units have been taken. So I don't know how well that has been
received. That's the Masara edition.
The Masara edition, which actually, they were going to do it in the launch in Srinagar. But then we've had all those problems. So that's why it was postponed and then it happened in Delhi. Now, I don't know how well the Masara edition has been accepted. We'll obviously know in a while. But these special editions, they not only obviously contribute to your bottom line, but they also contribute a lot in terms of that halo effect around the brand.
Absolutely.
So for this one car, you do a launch, you get all this media around it. Obviously, they look really cool, right? They're lavish. So people do talk about it in glowing terms. And that halo, the rub-off effect, is there on the rest of the range.
True.
So the rub-off is there on the Range Rover. And that is what's selling 2.5 times. That's how much sales have gone up after local assembly.
That's insane.
So pricing also does make a difference. So coming back to the FTA, right? We talked about it's not going to happen immediately. It's in discussion phase, at least a year and a half away. Second, the Range Rover Sport already assembled in India. Evoque, Discovery Sport, already assembled in India. It's not going to make a difference to the prices. If you're looking at something that is really up there in terms of an SV. Yes, so a year and a half down the line, that will have an impact. Maybe with the electric Jaguar, the production version of the Type 00, that will, because that is at least a year and a half away.
And maybe even the electric Range Rover, because
the electric Range Rover,
I don't know where they're going to assemble that. I mean, sure, okay, they have the capability to do it here because the line is existing here, but then the EV adds a whole separate dimension to it, you know, the drivetrain. You need separate capability, you need separate assembly lines. So maybe that will get a benefit from that.
So on that note, when we were in the UK, we actually had passenger rides in the electric Range Rover.
Okay, how was that?
Okay, our opinions are embargoed till I think the 12th or something. Yeah, so this was, the event was incredible because I think we had some 8 or 10 embargo forms for all the different things that we were looking at. So the Dakar Defender, the SV Black, then they had a white colored SV. In fact, some of it now, memory is a little foggy because after that we've been for 2-3 other events. So we saw a lot of stuff. They really packed in events. The most fun was going to JLR Heritage, driving the old Range Rovers, the old Defenders. So
they can't really embargo that because drive reviews came out 40 years ago.
Correct. So that we put out. But the other stuff, so like the passenger experience in the Range Rover Electric. Now, I can't talk about it. And obviously, now if you see like a full-fledged review of a passenger experience in a Range Rover Electric, no, there's only so much that you can make out.
But to be fair, a Range Rover Electric is meant to be passenger ridden in, so your impressions are very important from the passenger seat.
Okay, so in that sense, I can't tell you what it was, but I can tell you that everybody at Range Rover, at JLR in fact, they talked about that this is not, we're not focusing on that as the electric Range Rover. So it is fuel agnostic, similar to what BMW is doing. So if you want a petrol, if you want a diesel, you want a plug-in hybrid, and now you want an electric, you have all the options. You select what you want. And what they're actually stressing on is that the electric Range Rover is the best Range Rover that they've made.
And I think that's the right way to go because then a customer doesn't feel shortchanged if they're picking one option over the other. You know, I feel like what happened when the EQS came out, for example, Mercedes, well, to be completely frank, it didn't have the same rear comfort as an S-Class, even though it had the S in its name. Somebody looking for an S-Class would never look at an EQS, you know. And I feel that whole market, which was where an electric car would really benefit, silent, refined, no vibrations, no noise in the cabin. It fits with the luxury car perfectly.
Though that said, the V8 Range Rover, okay, when you're driving it normally, when it is idling, you cannot hear a thing. You cannot feel a thing. It's almost like an electric car. And then when you step on it, you have that brrr from the engine, which just adds an added layer of, I wouldn't say sophistication, but enthusiasm.
Emotion.
And emotion, exactly.
Absolutely. V8s do that.
Which, well, I'm not allowed to say whether the Range Rover Electric does that or does not do that, but you can take a guess. Right? And with these electrics, I think it's silly having all these sounds and all of that, all those piped-in sounds, even those iconic sounds that BMW has. An electric car is supposed to be silent. It's supposed to be refined and quiet, and why mess with that? So
the only right way to do it is like the Ioniq 5N.
Yes, where you have it banging off the rev limiter when you're in the mood for it, and then you switch it off when you're not in the mood for it.
Absolutely.
Right? So the Range Rover Electric, okay, that's coming to India. They already have expressions of interest from customers in India.
And they would. Why not?
So I thought it was surprising. I was like, no, who wants to buy an electric Range Rover? But they already are sitting on expressions of interest from India. So whatever first lot that they've earmarked for India, and it is coming to India, is done.
Timelines, right? Do we know?
I think very soon. Because anyway, it's a CBU. Okay. In the UK, they're not, they're going to have right-hand drive. It's not like a European car where they have left-hand drive and eventually they'll have right-hand drive for the UK, and then the other markets, they already have right-hand drive. So there's not much that needs to be rejigged for it to come to India. So I think it should come to India pretty soon. In fact, the Jaguar Type 00 was going to be showcased in India. And then that was, the whole event was canned after that tragic Air India accident that happened for 2 days before the event was supposed to happen in India. So that was really terrible. And obviously Tata Group, so they thought it wasn't right to do like a celebration, and fair enough. But that will also come to India. Now, on the Defender,
Yeah.
Okay.
There was a lot of talk. Oh, Defenders are going to get cheaper.
Because Defenders not assembled in India. So everybody thought, now Defenders are going to be. And I think more than the Range Rover and Range Rover Sport, there is that whole outpouring of love and emotion and want for a Defender.
Yeah.
The Defender is not made in the UK.
Yes.
It is made in Slovakia.
Correct.
So that has to wait for the EU-India FTA.
Yeah.
So
So when you're doing an FTA, a very critical component of it is the COO, country of origin. That certificate is what allows you to get the tax benefit.
Yeah.
So you need to prove that this car is, its origin is from the country in question.
Yep. So Defender doesn't come under this.
It may be a British company, but the country of origin is Slovakia.
Yeah. And also, the reason why they haven't localized the Defender here is that factory has not been built for making kits.
Oh.
So that's why the Defender, and to do that for India, okay, this year, Defender and obviously JLR itself, they had a very good year. I think they did some 6,800 odd units. But so say Defender would be maybe 2,000 out of that. So for 2,000 cars, you're not going to rejig a whole factory to make kits and all that. That will happen when the midlife facelift happens.
Hopefully.
There actually is a facelift on the Defender. I don't remember when the embargo for that is or if it has even expired, but we saw that facelift.
Okay.
Can I tell you what I saw? Okay, I'll tell you that it's a blink and you will, but I don't know if I'll be breaking the embargo if I say that also. So okay, anyway, I'll zip it. But there is an update on the Defender, that midlife kind of, and it's I can't say anything. So an update. We saw they have a special edition, the one which is on the camel colors.
Yeah.
For the new Defender trophy.
Yeah.
We saw that embargo has lifted. We've put up content on that, but that's not the facelift. So there is a small facelift that is coming up. Maybe after that, they will look at local assembly.
Yeah.
What they said is that that's not a priority right now. So right now, the priority is with the cars that they've assembled to focus on that. I think they have a big task on their hands with the Discovery. The full-size Discovery.
I think that car just got lost because it pretty much overlaps with the Defender.
Yeah.
Why it's like the Defender. Earlier the Defender wasn't monocoque. Now the Defender is monocoque. It is as a 110 would be as big and as spacious as a Discovery.
Yep.
And it just looks cooler.
Yep.
So why would you buy a Discovery?
Exactly. So the whole point of this trip to the UK was for JLR to bang into our heads that now JLR is the house of brands.
Yeah.
So there is no, earlier it used to be Land Rover, Range Rover, whatever.
So we shouldn't be saying JLR actually.
No, JLR is correct.
Huh.
Right? But calling anything a Land Rover Defender, no.
Okay.
It's no longer Land Rover Defender, it is Defender. So under JLR's house of brands, you have Jaguar, obviously going all electric. Okay. Then you have Range Rover, you have Defender, and you have Discovery.
Yeah.
So that's the whole universe. So Evoque, for instance, will come under Range Rover. It'll be the Range Rover Evoque, but it'll come under Range Rover. The same with the Velar. The Velar is due for an update. I don't know if it is going to be updated, but these are the four brands.
But then what happens to Discovery? Have they said anything?
So Discovery is now their next big challenge. Hey, there is an update on the Discovery also, by the way. We saw that.
No, but is it going to break any new ground and is it actually going to make a difference?
So that update is not going to break any new ground. There is an update on the Discovery Sport also with some...
See, that still has... Don't say anything. But like, if you look at the Discovery Sports segment, it's important because it is their most affordable car. It's on par or under the Evoque. Similar, right? But it does have, because of the price point, especially in an Indian context where India is price sensitive, I think there is value in that.
If you ask me, we've spent enough and more time with both the Evoque and the Discovery Sport. If I were to buy, or even if I were to recommend, unless you're like, no, terrifically style conscious, you're a fashion designer or something, the Discovery Sport is damn nice.
Yeah, it is.
It's actually got better ride comfort than most of its rivals. If you compare it with, say, the GLC, the X3, the Q5, the Discovery Sport has better ride comfort. Yeah. It's got the option of 3-row seating, which these others do not. So,
and it's got better off-road ability than all of them.
100%.
So
it doesn't have as good on-road dynamics as them. It doesn't have as good interior quality or even overall quality as all of them. But in India, if you look at it, in terms of ride comfort, the ability to really chew up miles.
Yeah, no, it's a very endearing car. I really like it.
It's very nice.
Yeah.
I think it's a surprise that that's been completely overlooked and overshadowed.
Yeah, I think there hasn't been so much of a push also from their part for it. I don't see it around. I don't hear about it.
Nothing.
And I mean, I
obviously
remember
the Range Rover is making all the noise and it is a halo product. Same with the Defender, but the Discovery Sport is
no, but if you remember the last 2010 decade, towards the end of the decade, we heard a lot about the Range Rover Sport. We drove it a lot. They had it in the fleet. We kept driving it.
The last car that I drove just before the COVID lockdown was the Discovery Sport.
Exactly.
When I drove it back from Goa to Pune. In fact, at Goa, because things were running out and everything, we went to a store and bought rice and oil and everything, loaded up in the Defender Sport, the Discovery Sport.
Yeah.
The Discovery Sport, I can assure you, has got a lot of space, and then we drove it down to Pune.
Yeah.
And that was 2 days before the lockdown actually got announced. Yeah. So what I was saying is that the Discovery brand, that's going to be their next point of focus.
Yeah, it should
because
be.
They have to completely revitalize that. And they say that the Discovery brand has got a enthusiastic following, especially amongst people who own dogs.
Okay, interesting.
Yep. So apparently, I think a third of all Discovery owners have dogs, have pets.
That's a nice stat.
Yeah. They also are a sponsor, partner in this event called Good Woof. It's a riff of Goodwood.
Yeah, okay.
Good Woof, which is like a dog show in the UK, and they are like a presenting partner for it. And they say that a lot of the customers are dog enthusiasts.
Cool.
One of the quirks of the business, I guess.
Yeah.
So anyway, they are going to double down, but I don't think right now, because right now all the profits, all the money that they're making, and they're making solid amount of money. In fact, we've written about it in the latest issue of the magazine. Their profits are through the roof. They're reinvesting those profits in more manufacturing facilities, obviously for electrics, because a lot of it is going into that. And obviously for Jaguar and the whole rebranding story and that whole exercise. So we did meet the Jaguar guys also. We did pepper them with a whole bunch of questions. Those were actually embargoed till the Type 00 launch in India, but now that's not happened. So I don't know what's happened to that embargo. But they were not very forthcoming in terms of the one question that I asked, which was, world over, now there isn't so much demand for a high-end electric car. In fact, just recently I read that Ferrari have postponed the launch of their second electric car because they're seeing a lot of resistance to the first one. The first one now they're already locked in, and they are going to launch it, I think, in October or November. So that is locked in. But the next car is going to be some time away because they aren't seeing that kind of offtake for it.
Yeah.
So with this, the styling, we spoke about this.
I have an interesting point over here, and this is something that I saw on the last drive that I was at, which was in Japan. I asked the Rolls-Royce guys who I was with the same question. We were there to drive the Rolls-Royce Spectre Black Badge Spectre. And it's pretty much a similar format of car as this Type 00. It's a massive car. It's got typical super coupe proportions, and it's electric, But the Spectre is the second most requested Rolls-Royce.
No way.
It is.
Really?
It is. So that's what I found really interesting. And I think if Jaguar can somehow tap into that market, it could actually make a case for itself.
Yeah, so they are looking at going almost, but not quite, to Bentley prices.
Correct.
So
no, but I'm saying that format of car. It's a big coupe, big luxury car. It's electric, and people want it. And I asked him why. Why do people want it? Like, what's drawn people to it? He said there's 3 reasons. One of them is that we have customers who'll buy anything that's new from us. So there's that clientele who we say there's a new car, they say we want it. There's a second type of customer who already has experienced EVs from other brands and then says, hey, Rolls-Royce has an EV, I want to try it. And then they get one. And then there's a third customer who likes the styling of it. The Spectre, you don't realize how big it is in the pictures. You'd think, okay, it's a Wraith, because it's a 2-door coupe. It's not a Wraith. It's the size of a Phantom. It's like a Phantom coupe. It dwarfs the Wraith, And when you see it in the flesh, how imposing it is, the size of it, the doors are massive. They open the other way around, It's got presence. And it looks like nothing else on the road. It looks like no other Rolls-Royce either, So there's that customer that's like, hey, that's insane. I want some of that. And I think the Jaguar will have the same effect. It looks like very little else on the road.
It looks insane.
Yeah. The only difference between a Rolls-Royce and a Jaguar is Jaguars have been incredibly emotional cars in the past. You know, and I think electrics suit Rolls-Royces a lot because they're all about luxury and silence and quietness and all of that. So I think that's where the divide is going to be, and maybe Jaguar will have that challenge to surmount. But otherwise, if they can get those things that the Spectre has gotten right, I don't see why they can't do it.
But going off topic, but sticking with Rolls-Royce,
Yeah.
you know, we talk about Ferrari saving the V12, Lamborghini saving the V12, but it's actually Rolls-Royce who are saving the V12.
Absolutely.
Because they only use the V12.
Yeah, it's either V12 or electric. You pick.
Exactly.
It's crazy.
So that twin turbo V12, which is a glorious engine, that Rolls-Royce is keeping alive. And obviously Rolls-Royce have also walked back from their plans to go all in on electric.
Yeah.
Bentley have already done that. So you're right with what you said about Jaguar, and especially for their first car. And I think after the first car, the 4-door, they will also have an SUV kind of thing, which is not called an SUV, like how the Purosangue is an SUV but is not called an SUV. For those, I think it'll be okay because it'll be low volume, high margin, looking like nothing else. But Jaguar as a brand, what happens to a brand that is going full electric?
Maybe
that is a question.
My hope, I would say, I don't know if this is going to happen, is the second car will be a sports car.
I don't think. The second car is going to be an SUV kind of thing.
But they have Range Rover for SUVs.
Yeah, because that's what the market is buying, right? So the Purosangue, Ferrari will insist that that's not an SUV, but obviously it is an SUV.
I don't know.
Right?
I think
the
they should.
Urus is an SUV.
Yeah, correct. But Lamborghini doesn't have four brands to leverage.
Yeah.
JLR has 4 brands to leverage. I think they should focus and
I think
use
the
those 4
second will
brands.
be like an SUV-ish kind of thing. Then maybe a sports car.
So you're saying like take the Range Rover electric platform, do something like the Cullinan with the
No,
Range.
I think the Jaguar platform,
Yeah.
the Jaguar electric platform, on that you have a separate top hat, which is kind of SUV-ish, like maybe not a Cullinan, because that is like properly Range Rover kind of territory, but more of a sporty SUV, coupe kind of thing. See, it's not like Jaguar haven't made SUVs, right?
True, but that's not
There is
like
the
their
F-Pace.
core heritage.
Yeah, the E-Pace. No, I-Pace.
Yeah.
The I-Pace also is... it's not really an SUV. Okay, it looks very unlike any other SUV, but it is an SUV. If you had to box it into a category, it's an SUV. So it's not like Jaguar haven't had precedent of making SUVs while Range Rover were making SUVs either.
I don't know. Jaguar, don't listen to Sirish and just make a sports car, please.
Eventually, it will come.
Yeah.
Right, but Abhi for and
Think
also,
about this.
the thing
Okay,
is,
think about this. The electric platform allows you to do so much, right? It's insane. You can take an electric car, take a little bit of what Hyundai has done with the Ioniq 5N, and give it drive modes. But instead of drive modes, you have D-type, and it can mirror torque curves and noise of the D-type, and then you can pick E-type, and then you can pick F-type, and then you can pick all sorts of XK120, and you can pick cars from Range Rover's history in this one car, which sounds like them, which delivers performance like them, and if you have your 6D suspension, which can really change things up, maybe it can even ride like them. I don't know.
But the one flaw in that is that the Ioniq, for instance, okay, it is not a hatchback. It is as big as an SUV. The thing is, with all these electric cars, with the batteries under the floor, you can't make a low, light, delicate electric car.
Never.
But even you can't make a low sports car. So what is the electric Boxster should have been here by now, right? And that is not using a skateboard. That's using the batteries. The batteries are placed where the engine is on a current Boxster. But Porsche, they haven't been able to get it right. That's why the delay in the electric Boxster and Cayman.
Okay.
So Porsche can't get their electric
You're eroding
sports
any
car
hope
right.
I have of...
So I don't see Jaguar getting it right before Porsche. Come on, you got to give credit where credit's due.
Absolutely, I agree
Do
with
we
you.
have an electric sports car?
Cyberster.
So the Cyberster, we will be driving it very soon.
Yeah.
Right? It's almost here in India. Our colleagues in the UK have driven it. We've carried a story also in the magazine. And everything that they've said is that it's not a sports car. You sit too high up. Because obviously that is the electric platform.
Yeah.
So nobody has done a proper electric sports car. AMG, Now, I went to Stuttgart recently to see the GT XX concept, and that is going to spawn their first electric car, which is due early next year. That also is not a sports car. It is a 4-door. It's a replacement to the GT 4-door.
It's a Taycan rival.
It's a replacement of the GT 4-door. So it is that big. It's bigger than a Taycan. And the reason why they've done that is because of the battery packaging. You cannot do a small, nimble, low sports car. And in our mind, a sports car has to be low.
Yeah.
And that's not something you can do with the current EV architectures. You can get performance. Okay, you can get speed out of it. With the electronics, you can get like some crazy torque vectoring and do some mad handling and dynamic abilities to it. But can you get the driver and passenger to sit like they would in a 911, in a Boxster, in an E-Type?
See, all you need to do is have batteries everywhere except where the seats are, and slam the seats down.
Yeah, exactly. But then there's not enough space, right? So in the hybrid cars today, where are the batteries? The batteries are in the transmission tunnel. They're behind the driver.
Yeah.
So batteries are already being packaged for hybrid cars. But now you don't have that much space, right? And that's what Porsche are doing with the electric Boxster. They're putting the batteries where the engine was to get that weight balance and to get that low seating. In fact, in a Taycan, you don't sit that high in a Taycan.
You don't.
But that is the max you can go. And they also have at the rear, they have those cutouts for the passenger's feet to go into the footwell so that you can sit kind of low, which obviously impacts the amount of batteries that you can put in. But yeah, low. Sports cars, low. That's not something that you... So an E-Type Jaguar, an electric E-Type, I don't think it's coming anytime soon. Anyway, we digress. Rolls-Royce.
Yeah.
Now, with those quotas, now Rolls-Royce aren't selling 6,800 odd cars in India, right? So when those quotas kick in, when the FTA comes down, 10 crore Rolls-Royce would probably be around 6-7 crores.
That'll be insane.
Now that's going to happen.
Yeah.
It'll take time, but that is going to happen. So if you are in the market for a Rolls-Royce, though, if you're in a market for a Rolls-Royce, you wouldn't care, right?
Hey, 4 crores no small. It's not pocket change for anybody.
Yeah, actually not pocket change either.
Yeah.
But
And then when you spec your Rolls-Royce up, you're adding another 3 crores to that value.
Exactly. And nobody buys a base Rolls-Royce.
Exactly.
Everybody specs like dhaba-dhab, they spec it. In fact, when I went and when I drove the Spectre, in fact, I drove it in France and we were staying in this vineyard.
Ghost you drove?
No, I also drove the Spectre.
Okay.
I wanted to drive the Spectre. So when I went there, the first thing I grabbed the keys to was the Spectre. And my God, it was so stressful because what you said, the size of the thing.
It's big. Yeah.
And on those French narrow roads, oh my God, every time traffic coming from that, I would pull over and say, please, aap jao, then I'm going to move. It was so stressful.
Yeah.
It was, I think, that first evening, right? It was a 80-kilometer loop. At 30 kilometers, I turned around.
Yeah.
I said, this is too much. Man.
And when a car has those massive wheels, even a slight ding on them, and you'd be like, oh God.
And these guys would say, oh, this idiot who's come. So after 30 kilometers, I turned around and said, like, okay, keep it. Let me just get used to it. And tomorrow we were driving it on the motorway. So then, okay. Chalo. But not on those narrow roads, man. That's, it is massive.
It's huge.
Right? So a Spectre, that prices will be reasonably more attractive.
Yeah, the Spectre Black Badge just launched in India. 9.5 crores.
Without
base.
The options.
Yeah.
Right?
And then you can go wild with options.
Yeah.
So it's insane.
Yeah. Same with Bentley.
Yeah.
Now, Bentley has or is moving under the Skoda Volkswagen group in India. We broke the story. There was a lot of upset faces all around when we broke that story. Yeah. But we did break that story of Bentley now going to be under the Volkswagen group. They already have a head for the Bentley business in India. It's not formally still transitioned, but Bentley will benefit.
Yeah.
And Bentley, after looking at Lamborghini's numbers in India, they are like, why are we not selling those kind of numbers? And the thing is, these Bentleys, they're better suited to our Indian roads and conditions. Obviously, Lamborghinis are wild and all of that. But Bentleys are more comfortable. They can take our roads better. Bentleys have sedans. The sedans are super luxurious, not too low. They're not going to touch over speed breakers. So Bentley really has a lot of potential in India. And once this whole FTA thing comes through, their business is definitely going to go up, even though they'll be restricted in terms of the numbers at the start. But I think for Bentley, this is like, no, manna from heaven.
Absolutely. And being part of the group and using all of that.
Exactly.
And while we're on the topic of Rolls-Royce and Bentley, I need to tell you about what I went to Japan for with Rolls-Royce. So we got to visit Magarigawa. And if you're not familiar with the name, I'm sure you'll be familiar with the place. You would have seen on Instagram, if you're a car enthusiast, there's no way you miss this, a private racetrack built by a billionaire because he wanted to drive his cars and also take his family somewhere. You know, his core problem was, there are racetracks, but there's nowhere for my family to chill while I'm driving my cars. So he basically built his own racetrack, which is insane. He got Herman Tilke of Tilke Engineers and Architects.
Who made BIC also, who designed BIC.
Who designed a number of F1 tracks to design this track. In the heart of this track is a luxury members-only club with the most incredible facilities. There are, I think, a few villas on the property. They've got a big parking bay where you can store your cars. So if you could just fly in and drive and leave. And we got to drive the Rolls-Royce Black Badge cars over there, the entire range. So we had Black Badge Spectre, Black Badge Ghost, and Black Badge Cullinan. Now, I'll get to the cars, but I think the track deserves some talking about because it's so special. The track is about 3.5 kilometers long, but what really gets you is the gradient. 125 meters.
Wow.
What is not the difference. So difference is 250 because you're going up 125 and then coming down 125. And 125 meters is about a 40-story building. So there are really steep climbs on this track. And it's a driver's track. It's not a race track in that you've got massive runoffs and it's not FI homologated, grade 1, grade 2, nothing. There are portions of the track where you're turning into an apex and the wall is here. You know, there are runoffs where, in the braking zones and all of that, but it's not going on forever. If you make a mistake, you will crash. The track is not so wide, but it's keeps you busy. And how? It's constant left, right. There's a portion of the track where it's its steepest and you come up over a crest and you're just pointing at the sky and that's your turn-in point for a downhill right. So it's almost like the corkscrew but in reverse because you're going up and then you go down. And that's also your point where you enter the pit lane. So if you go straight, you're into the pit lane. And if you go right, you continue down the track. The pit lane is indoors.
Wow.
You drive into the building. They have 2 doors with sensors. So when they sense a car approaching, the door slides open and you get into this temperature controlled pit lane. In the pit lane, they've got timing screens. They've got mechanics if you have an issue with your car. They've got driving coaches. So you can get out of the car. The driving coach will see your onboards or he'll be tracking your lap and he'll tell you what to do different. The club is insane. They've got a children's playroom. They've got Japanese gardens all over. They've got restaurants, obviously. They've got a spa. And a spa where you can have your massage while looking at the track. They've got an onsen. And onsen is like a Japanese hot spring bath.
Okay.
So they've actually drilled a kilometer underground, found hot spring water, piped it into this onsen. You can sit in the onsen. You've got the track below you. You've got Mount Fuji in the distance. It's unbelievable. It's like this little oasis, which is a luxury getaway for automotive enthusiasts.
Unreal,
and
man.
It's crazy.
Unreal.
And then we drove those cars there. Yeah. You've got 20 Rolls-Royces at your disposal. That doesn't happen every day. It was insane.
But you know what? We're going to have our own version of Magarigawa in India very soon.
Yeah.
The Bren Raceway is, may not be Magarigawa level, but
Magarigawa.
Magarigawa. Okay. Magarigawa level. But they also will have a 30-key resort on site.
Okay.
Bhupesh was telling me about Bhupesh Reddy, who is the promoter of the track, about it being green all over, some 5 odd kilometers. They have 2 separate, so it can be split into 2 separate tracks. They have a drag strip also coming up, a skid pad. So, and I admire the guy. There are a lot of people who have the money, but here he's put his money behind his enthusiasm.
Right.
Otherwise, a lot of people in that industry would probably put 3 towers and do a township over there.
Yeah.
But here he's got the land, and instead of doing putting towers and doing a township, he's made a racetrack.
Yeah. He's
to
giving back to
indulge
the
his
enthusiasts.
passion for cars. He's got the finest collection of sports cars in the
100%.
country today.
Without a doubt. Yeah.
And now he's got a racetrack to do justice to those cars and to give us something to enjoy on.
Yeah.
So
True.
I think, man, you would have thought this would never ever happen in our lifetimes in India. But there is a track coming up in India, in Bangalore.
True.
Like some half an hour, 45 minutes from the airport.
Yeah.
So it's not like in the middle of God knows where.
Yeah.
And it's going to be India's version of this really cool racetrack.
True.
So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah.
And on that note, we should come back to what we were talking about.
Sure. Come.
Okay. So what are we talking about? FTA.
FTA, and now let's talk about how the FTA benefits India, because we've
Yep.
spoken a lot about how it benefits customers in India
Yep.
and manufacturers in the
Yeah.
UK.
So all these cars, Range
Yeah.
Rovers, Bentleys, are going to come in. Now, there'll be a lot of cars going out also.
Yes.
And I think especially with the electrics, okay, with the Mahindra electric range,
Mhm.
with the Tata electric range. Tata also has plans to do Avinya,
Yeah.
their one step up brand that will be in between JLR and Tata Motors. So like a luxury Tata car, which is again going to be all pure electric.
Yeah.
Now, those brands will find a really strong footing in the UK. In terms of prices, now we all talk about how the Chinese are undercutting Europe, and Europe, they're putting taxes on the Chinese cars and everything. Indian cars aren't that much more expensive than the Chinese equivalents. So our Indian EVs will be able to compete on price with the Chinese. Okay. In terms of the styling, in terms of the features, our Indian EVs are really, really good.
Yeah.
I haven't yet driven the Harrier EV. In fact, nobody's really driven the Harrier EV. We just had an experience of
Yes.
it. But we've driven the XEV9E, we've driven the B6. Both are really excellent. And that's just the start of Mahindra's EV journey. Tata already is one step ahead in terms of the EV journey, the number of offerings and all of that. The Harrier EV is going to be like a big thing. Then after that, the Sierra, which will be an even bigger thing. Then Avinya, like I said. All of this will then go to the UK. The e-Vitara.
Mhm.
The e-Vitara made here, going to the UK
Yeah.
and to other markets when
Yeah.
the other FTAs come through.
Yeah.
So for Indian manufacturers...
Also bikes.
And bikes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So many bikes, global manufacturers manufacture through contract in India. TVS has BMW.
Yep.
Bajaj owns KTM now.
Royal
But-
Enfield, man.
Royal Enfield, yeah.
The biggest story.
Correct, yeah, true.
Yeah.
So, all of these bikes, when they go to the UK, they'll be even more competitively priced. Royal Enfield's incredibly competitively
Yes.
priced by their standards anyway.
Yep.
It'll get even more competitive. A lot of the smaller capacity BMWs and KTMs will get a lot cheaper.
True.
And if KTM eventually starts manufacturing its big bikes here, all of that will also sort of leverage that and get a benefit in the UK.
Yep.
You know, so for bike manufacturers, that's a huge benefit. And what we've not spoken about is Norton. TVS owns Norton.
Yep.
Nortons are made in the UK.
Yep.
So again, going back to cars and bikes coming into India, we should get Nortons at a great price. I mean, Nortons are going to be ridiculously expensive. They are at the absolute upper end of motorcycling. But if we can just get the taxes out of the way, I'm sure enthusiasts wouldn't mind, flocking to them.
Eventually, it all boils down to timing. If this had happened, say, 5 years ago, it would be only the foreign manufacturers getting access to the huge base that is India. But today, if you think about it logically, we've come to this level where the Indian manufacturers have upskilled to such a level that they can sell abroad.
Yeah.
They have the brand recognition.
Yeah.
Now, I think because of Formula E especially, Mahindra is known in evolved markets. Tata is definitely known because of all the other industries that they're in. Bajaj, well, there is a Bajaj sticker on the KTM MotoGP machine. And now the biking world knows Bajaj as the owner of KTM and the savior of KTM. Similarly, TVS will do brand building and in the Southeast Asia, because of what they do in terms of racing, TVS is already visible. So our Indian manufacturers are strong enough to compete with global giants in evolved markets.
But I also think, being realistic, they need to up their game in terms of quality control and just finish levels overall. I don't think a British customer would be okay with the sort of quality that some of our Indian manufacturers put out, especially when the Chinese are able to deliver high quality fit and finish straight off the bat. a first impression matters, and when those cars go into the UK, I think they'll need to sort that out. And they haven't. Yeah, but they need to.
I think that's happening also now.
Yeah.
So Mahindra, it's no secret. Yeah, they've had problems with the BE6 and the 9e. Those are getting sorted out. Same. I hope the Harrier EV is first time they get it right, and it doesn't have to go through that 6-8 months of customers screaming and yelling, and then address those issues. And with the Sierra, they should obviously be a little more focused on the quality. You're right. The quality does need to take a step up. But also look at what Royal Enfield have done. They are a homegrown manufacturer.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Nobody talks about Royal Enfield having quality issues anymore.
Nope. In fact, they topped some charts.
JD Power.
Yeah.
So Royal Enfield has topped. Now, if Royal Enfield can do it,
absolutely,
competing with the best in the world in that category,
and keeping their prices sane.
Yeah. Right? What is stopping the others, the four-wheeler manufacturers, from doing it? See, TVS, they were making the BMWs, the 310s, under contract, which was being exported all over the world. Nobody had any problems in terms of the quality.
True.
Same, Bajaj is doing contract manufacturing for KTM, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you as a KTM owner would have other stories, but I don't think world over really KTM has got this reputation for poor quality.
No,
not really.
No.
Yeah. Made in India.
But I also think the level of complication, like you look at a BE6 versus a Royal Enfield, the level of complexity in a BE6 versus a classic
100%.
650
100%.
is night and day.
100%. So, but also they're operating at a different price point also, So they're operating at that price that they can offer that quality. What I'm getting at is that there's nothing stopping Indian manufacturers being on par in terms of global quality levels.
Agreed.
And our bike manufacturers have shown that it is possible.
100%.
So it's not like beyond the abilities.
Yeah.
It's all possible. And I think this whole FTA talk, when it comes through, is not going to be just that, oh great, we're going to get Porsches for cheap and all of that. It's going to really benefit our Indian manufacturing, where they can then go and be the next wave after this wave of Chinese EVs.
Yeah.
There's a lot of resistance to the Chinese. People are buying it because obviously it is cheap, but nobody really wants a Chinese EV. Hopefully the way the Indian cars, bikes, EVs go out will be in a more positive manner.
Yeah.
Nobody's saying really negative things about India. Right? We don't have aspiration in terms of I want this land and I want that land and all of that. So we don't piss off the world.
Correct.
Right? So this should really benefit the Indian industry, and net, it should be really good for us car enthusiasts.
Fingers crossed.
Of course, if Porsches also now come in cheaper, that'd be great for all of us.
Yeah, I mean, who wants a Carrera 2 Crores, man? Like, it's crazy.
Well, it's selling.
That's the problem.
It's selling. Anyway, that's all we have for this episode of the Evo India podcast. What do you think about the FTA talks with the UK, with the EU, with North America? What do you hope should come out of it? And what should be the benefits to the Indian manufacturers? Let us know in the comments, and we'll see you next week.